Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today on this episode, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. You know, I love doing these videos that help up and coming aspiring professional anglers, especially the young anglers out there that are getting out of high school or college and they want to make a career in bass fishing. Now, when I'm talking about a career in bass fishing, it doesn't necessarily mean just a tournament angler. In fact, most of the time it means a combination of tournament fishing, which is usually our passions to start out with, content producing, working with sponsors, all of these different facets of this career. That's kind of what I'm talking about. Nowadays, you don't even have to fish tournaments to make a living in the sport. You can be an influencer, a content creator, and make a good living. But that being said, this sport is very, very expensive. Even if you're just a content creator and you don't need to worry about all the entry fees and paying all the travel expenses, it's still going to be expensive. You're going to have, some equipment to film with, to edit with, and all those different things. But as we all know, the one thing you do need for, fishing, especially if you're fishing tournaments, is you need to have a boat. And you also need a truck to pull that boat. And you need rods and reels and all the equipment that goes with it. You need to be able to put gas in the boat and the truck. You need to be able to pay entry fees, pay for lodging, and all the stuff that goes into tournament fishing or, just fishing. It's a very expensive sport, and it's only getting worse every single year, especially with inflation. I mean, the prices of boats nowadays are astronomical. Tow vehicles are through the roof right now. But with all that being said, you can still do it. And you can do it even if you're not financially well off to start out with. And that's one thing that I think that a lot of young anglers get the wrong message when they're starting out. They get a lot of people telling them that the sport is way too expensive. You can do it. I promise you can do it. You can't do it if you spend too much money right off the bat. But I started out, I graduated high school, moved to Florida, moved into a travel trailer, and I did all this to pursue a career in the sport. I didn't have the latest and greatest tow vehicle or boat or all the electronics or equipment. I was living within my means, and I had a small 1987 Tidecraft boat. It was like a 17-footer. It had dry rot in the transom. The motor was good, but other than that, it was not a great boat, but it was a great first boat. And so that's the first thing that I want you guys to realize is that starting off with a inexpensive boat, an older boat, and the same thing goes for your tow vehicle, is not a bad thing. Like, I think everybody starts making purchases based on their ego and the perception that they want people to have of them, rather than the fact that they can afford something or not. And that is a very, very easy trap to fall into in this sport because everybody wants to look like they're a professional. But it's one that you really need to pay attention to and make decisions based on need and what kind of implications it has on your income, rather than, perceived, success level. For instance, nowadays I see a lot of high school anglers and college anglers that are just starting off, and they've got the same boat that I have, the latest and greatest boat. They've got the jacked up truck, and I'm like, hopefully your family's wealthy to start out with, because if you're kind of at the level I was, you're not going to get very far in this sport because you're just not going to be getting the return on those investments early on when you first start out. I mean, you're not going to be able, if you're not fishing the tour level, you're not going to be making a living in tournament fishing and be able to pay for all that equipment just from tournament winnings. You're going to have to do some other job to offset that. And to me, I just don't think it's very sustainable. So when you're first starting out, get into the mindset of being proud
to make those financial sacrifices early on. Eat top ramen, eat off the dollar menu. For years, I ate off of the dollar menu at Taco Bell. And for years, I would eat top ramen, and also I remember a time period where I was eating mustard sandwiches, just bread and mustard, because that's all I could afford. I had this lady across from me in one of the trailer parks that would make me cookies, and I'd live off of those cookies for, a couple weeks. So, live within your means. Buy the equipment that you can afford early on. It may not be flashy. It may look like it's all falling apart, but if it gets you out there in the water and gets you competing in tournaments or gets you out there creating content, that's all you need. And you should be proud of that early on. Don't purchase based on ego and perception. That is the first piece of advice that I have for you. Same thing goes for your rent and everything else. All those expenses, you need to have a very small list of bills that you have early on. Live thin, live on somebody's couch. Later on in my college fishing career, I lived in that same travel trailer, but in a friend's yard. I had an opportunity to leave my trailer in my buddy's yard. Very, very thankful for the Mangold family for that. Kept my overhead low. All those things are going to help you in the future. So don't max out your credit right off the bat, or don't take a bunch of loans. Definitely don't take high interest loans. Avoid all of that and just figure it out. You can do it. You can figure it out. So the second piece of advice, it just blows my mind that we don't teach this in school. This should be a topic that we all learn in elementary school and in high school, and that is how to have a healthy relationship with credit cards and also how to get a good credit score. Because in this career path, there's going to be a time where you're going to have at least a fairly new vehicle, because you're representing sponsors on that vehicle. And so you're going to have a vehicle that is somewhat newer and more expensive, because you're representing companies that don't want to be represented, on a cargo van that's fallen apart, or a rusty SUV or something like that. So there is going to be a time where you're going to need to take out loans. I'm not telling you, the first part of this, living within your means, doesn't mean that you need to pay cash for everything. In fact, taking loans out is a really, really important part of my whole business model. I don't pay cash for my boat. I don't pay cash for my truck. I take out loans. But having good credit is such an important part of taking out those loans, that I can't believe nobody taught me about it early on. Okay, because having a good interest rate can be the difference between spending a manageable amount and something that just keeps you in the hole every single month and going from paycheck to paycheck. I've been there. I had a boat loan that was astronomical, real gangster rates. I was very thankful for the opportunity to have that loan because I didn't have any credit, but I was spending almost $900 a month on a boat that was only $22,000. So anyways, so the next piece of advice is build your credit. If you're a high school angler or college angler or out of school, you need to be using credit cards. Okay, but you need to use them responsibly. And this is exactly what I wish somebody had told me about. When I had credit cards in college, I was using them very poorly. I was essentially living off of whatever balance I had left on that credit card. And, I might have only $80 left on that credit card. And I always had a revolving balance. And usually it was 95% of the total credit that I had, I would have a revolving balance of that. Okay. And then live off of that other 5%. It was ridiculous. I was spending a lot of money on interest and all that stuff. But nowadays I have a bunch of different credit cards. I use one or two of them on the regular, and I pay them off every single month. So the same expenses that you'd be using a debit card for or cash for, you need to be using a credit card for. Never use debit cards and never use cash if you can help it for business expenses, especially because it's easier to be able to track your business expenses on a credit card using the statements than it is with using cash. And there's a couple other reasons why you need to start using credit cards. Okay, so never use a debit card. That's something I wish somebody had told me early on. And nowadays it's more and more important because as far as security, people's identities are getting stolen left and right. I'm constantly getting my credit cards, jacked. Where I recently had somebody jack my credit card and spend like $7,000 at this place called Elegant Puppies. It's down in Miami somewhere, but I didn't buy anything at Elegant Puppies, but I was able to get all of that money back because I used a credit card. So when we're traveling around fishing tournaments, debit cards are a liability. You can, if somebody scams you and gets your credit or your debit card information and takes money out of your account or makes a big purchase, you may not get that money back. But with a credit card, you're guaranteed pretty much to get that money back. So you're not on the hook for those fraudulent charges. So that is the main reason why you want to use credit cards, is because of the security aspect of them. Okay, the next thing that you want to use credit cards for is to build that credit. Okay, that credit score is super important. You need to get up into the 700s, the near 800s. If you have a perfect credit score, that's even better. Always use your credit card, pay it off at the end of the month, and if you do that, you're not going to pay interest, and you're going to build your credit. And it's also really good to have as many credit cards as you possibly can. As long as you're not paying like an annual fee for that credit card, it doesn't hurt anything. It only bumps up your credit limit, which means that say you have $10,000 in credit. If you spend $1,000, that's 10% of your total credit. But if you have $100,000 in your credit, that's only 1% of your credit limit. And so your credit score, part of it is based on how much of your max credit that you're using and that you have a balance on. And so you'll have a better credit score if you're using a smaller percentage of your credit card balance, if that makes any sense. But so security is number one. The fact that you're building your credit score is number two. And number three is you get points. Okay, I spend a lot of money on my business credit card every single year, and that's a big key distinction. Always have, a personal credit card, and then always have a business credit card. Use your business credit card for only fishing related, business related items, and then your personal card, make sure that you're using for just personal things. And talk to your accountant. Really talk to somebody that knows which expenses are actually a write-off and which ones have to be categorized as personal. It's going to help you at the end of the year for tax season. So always make that delineation and have credit cards for both things, personal and business. But another reason why I use my credit card for everything is because I get points back. I like cash back points. So usually that's like 1% to 3% on purchases. And, you're not paying interest every month because you're paying it off every month. And you also get some points. So I use it for hunting gear or to take Katie out to dinner, at the end of the year. I usually get like $1,500 in bonus points by the end of the year. So, because I have a lot of expenses. So that is probably the most important piece of advice that I can give you is get credit cards, get as many of them as you can, as long as you're not, spending money on a annual, fee to have those credit cards. If you're not using them, that's not necessarily a problem, okay? I only use 1 or 2 of the probably 10 credit cards that I have, and I use them a lot, but I pay them off every single month, and I never pay interest. So anyways, I know I harped on that quite a bit, but to me, that is such an important thing that nobody really told me in this sport is to build my credit. Learn how credit is affected, learn ways that you can build your credit and how to have a healthy relationship with loans and credit cards. I think it's going to go a long way, because when you get to that point where you need to purchase a more expensive boat or a more expensive truck, having a good credit score is going to help you tremendously to keep your overhead low. If you have a bad credit score, you might not even be able to get the loan, but you're more than likely going to have really high interest, which is going to have a high monthly payment. So anyways, guys, just some advice that I wish somebody had told me. If you have any questions at all, I'd be happy to help you with any of your financial questions that you have in the sport. I've done it all. I've made all the mistakes, but I've also made a lot of good decisions when it comes to finances in the sport. And so I do, have some input on it. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, drop a comment below if you have any questions or comments. And I'm going to see you out on the water. Make sure you trust the process.